There we go. All right, let's start our meeting today. Welcome to another meeting, quarterly meeting of the Measure X Oversight Committee. I'm Barbara Meister. I'm your chair, or is that my title? I think chair. Yes. Thank you. And what I'd like to do is begin by doing our roll call. But I think what I'll do is have you each introduce yourself. I'll call on you two at a time. And then Maria, will you record the roll as we do that? Is Maria with us?
Yes.
Yeah, there you are. Okay, right in front of me. Wonderful, thanks. Okay, so again, I'm Barbara Meister and I represent hospitality. I'm with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So if you could say your name, your organization, and then the particular interest group that you are representing here on the Oversight Committee. So next we'll go to Paula and then to Paul. Paula, you are muted.
With that, I'm Paula Getzelman, and I represent Southern Monterey County Rural Coalition in South County.
Paul?
And you're vice chair, aren't you not?
Yes, ma'am, I think I am.
Hi, Paula.
Okay, Paul, if you would go next, and then Natalie.
Paul Arnado, Monterey County Farm Bureau alternate.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm the youth rep.
Okay, Rick, and then Janet.
I'm Rick Hoyer. I'm the alternate representing the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association.
Janet Brennan, representing the League of Women Voters of Monterey County.
Wonderful. Victoria, and then Howard.
Hi, I'm Victoria Beach. I'm the bicycle advocate at large for the county.
Hi, everybody. I'm Howard Fossler. I'm the alternate representative with the League of Women Voters of Monterey County.
Tom.
Howdy.
Keith.
Tom Raleigh with the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. Howdy.
Howdy.
And Barbara, I think you said Keith, Keith Everson, Granite Rock, representing construction as an alternate, and seeing Barbara and Kevin for the second Zoom meeting in a couple of hours, I think.
I think third. All right. Good to see you, Keith. Again, Kevin, and then Teresa.
Kevin Dayton. I represent the Salinas Taxpayers Association, representing taxpayers in the Salinas Valley.
All right, Ron. Sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
Okay.
Apologize.
I'm Teresa Sullivan with Alliance on Aging. I'm an alternate representing seniors.
All right, now Rod and then Scott.
Hi, this is Rod, operating engineer, local 3.
What's up?
We're on a Zoom.
This is Zoom.
Thanks, Rod. You're a little shaky. And Oma, if you wouldn't mind muting until it's your turn. Thanks. Go ahead, Scott.
Scott Waltz, represent the Sierra Club.
Wonderful. Okay, and who else are we missing?
Did we get Robin and did we get Gabby?
Yes, let's do Gabby and then Robin.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Gabby and I am the alternate for Natalie for the Youth and College representative.
All right, welcome. Robin?
Excuse me, Robin Lee, Communities for Sustainable Monterey County, representing pedestrian and environmental.
Wonderful. Okay. And then Monica, are you a representative to the board?
Yeah, I'm the alternate for the Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, Monica Law.
Wonderful to see you. I hadn't seen you here before. That's why it's like, wait a minute, do I have that right? Thank you. I'm glad you're here. And Jonathan and Oma.
Yes, my name is Jonathan Geisler, and I'm representing the Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. And Oma, are you a member of our Oversight Committee? You are on mute.
Carol, that's you. Carol, can you unmute? Carol, can you hear us? There you
I'm
go.
sorry, did I unmute? Did I do it?
Yes, you're good. Yes.
Okay,
we can
it's
hear you
Carol
now.
Kenyon, and I'm the alternate for Southern Monterey County Rural Coalition.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. You're not Oma, you're Carol. Got it.
Well, my grandson calls me Oma, and he put my computer together for me, so he put that name on there.
Got it. I will not call you Oma, though. I'm going to call you Carol.
Thank you.
Only your grandson has that privilege. All right, I believe we've got everybody except for staff, who I will have you all introduce yourselves as you go and you're making presentations to us. All right, we are now open for public comment. Is there anyone in this meeting who wishes to address the board about any topic that's not already on our agenda?
Change the date on your computer later.
I don't believe there is. It's just Oversight Committee members and staff.
Actually, I would like to make a comment, Barbara, if that's
Sure.
okay. It's Teresa
Yes.
Sullivan. Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. I know that Jessica spoke, McKillop from ITN spoke last month about the ITN Country program. And so I don't want to repeat everything that she said, but I do want to recognize some folks that are on this committee and that have been helping us as we move along. They're members of our steering committee, and that is some staff from PAMC and staff from MST. Councilman Mike Labar has been part of the steering committee as well as Mayor Velasquez. We've had people from the city of Gonzales and some community members. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them for helping be part of that steering committee as we move forward, trying to develop the program and look at specifically some of the operational issues. So I just wanted to say that. Just quickly, one of the things that we have been involved in recently has been we have launched a survey, and we actually did about 375 in South County. We'll be launching one as well in North County. We actually have a few, but we'll be working on getting more. And we have also started a campaign in North County and finished a campaign in South County to decide on a name for the program. So I'm not quite ready to announce it. We still have a few more contacts to make before we do announce the name for the project in South County. But as soon as we do, either I or Jessica will let you know. So we have been working Alliance on Aging with ITN on this, as we are recipients of Measure X dollars. We are coordinating transportation needs with seniors. One of the things that we realized in the first cycle was that the transportation options in South County are clearly limited for seniors. So second cycle, we've really been focusing on working with ITN to develop this ITN Country program. So it has been really a very exciting project thus far, and we have had some wonderful community support. So just wanted to share that, everyone.
Great, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, any other public comment, any other thing to share that's not on the agenda ahead of us? If not, then okay, we will close public comment and move on to our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda are two items. One is our minutes from our August meeting, and the other is the recommendation from Teresa for our meeting schedule for 2022. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at that. Dates in February, April, August, and October. And at this point, I would, unless you want to pull anything off the consent agenda for discussion, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I did see one word there, define, that should be defines, and I think I sent that in a couple days ago for a correction. Other than that, I didn't see anything wrong with the minutes, so I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, and is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Jonathan. So it's been moved and second to accept or approve our consent agenda. All those in favor say aye, or put your hand up.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. Great. We have a pretty light agenda today, but on our regular agenda, we want to turn to Teresa and Paula for this next item to review the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee bylaws and also receive the Measure X Transportation Safety and Investment Plan Ordinance. This is something that we need to do every year. And Teresa, I'll turn it to you next.
Okay, thank you so much. So as you all may recall, there was some discussion at our last meeting about what the Oversight Committee's roles and responsibilities were. So we were asked to come back to you this time and present that, and also the ordinance, which I sent both of those to you in your agenda packet. But I'd like to just kind of walk through what's in the ordinance and what's in the projects and policies description. And so some of it's a little history that you're familiar with, but since we have some new members, I'll take some of the basics as well. So Mike, if you can go ahead and start. And as this presentation comes up, again, this is about what your Oversight Committee duties and responsibilities are. So starting with the next slide. As you all remember, in November 2016, we put a measure on the presidential election ballot, and it was for our transportation safety and investment plan. What we proposed was a 3/8% tax, which is a fraction of a penny. And over the course of 30 years, it's anticipated that $600 million will be raised through this measure. Now that's a local transportation fund for local projects. 60% of that money goes directly to the cities and the county for local projects, and then 40% comes back to TAMSI for regional projects. So going on to the next slide. That measure was approved and certified, and this was the vote. 67.71% of voters in Monterey County approved Measure X. Now, with that, what they approved were the projects and the programs which were described in this next document that we're going to bring up. This is the document. It's the policies and project descriptions for the Transportation Safety and Investment Plan. And inside of that document, there was descriptions for each of the projects that were defined in the measure. And there was also discussion about the Measure X Oversight Committee, very detailed about who would be on that committee, who could be nominated, what organizations, and then what your duties are. And the duties as defined in this document, which was approved, are to conduct independent audits, plan changes, project delivery, and priorities, and annual and final reports. So let me just define each of those according to this document. Independent audits means that this committee will have full access to the agency's independent auditor and review the annual audits. This committee will have the authority to request and review specific financial information and provide input on the audit to assure that funds are being expended in accordance with requirements of this plan. The next duty, plan changes. This is to review and make recommendations on any proposed changes to the plan which TAMSI brings forth prior to the Transportation Agency Board consideration. These plan changes just relates to the policies and projects description. And the example that I'd like to share with you is the one where we updated the maintenance of effort methodology, and we brought this to your committee for review. And then based upon your comments, we modified that to add indexing based upon what you provided for us. So that's what the responsibilities are when it comes to plan changes. The next category, project delivery and priorities. Your responsibilities are to review and comment on project delivery schedules as represented in the strategic expenditure plan and make recommendations to the Transportation Agency on any proposals for changing project delivery priorities. And then finally, the last duty is to prepare annual reports regarding the administration of the program to be presented to the Transportation Agency Board of Directors and make it available for public review. So moving on to the next slide. This is the ordinance, you have it, and there's a section 7, which is purpose. What is the purpose of the ordinance? The ordinance is adopted to achieve the following, among other purposes, and directs that the provisions hereof to be interpreted in order to accomplish these purposes. And particularly, I want to point out section A, which says to implement specific projects and programs and the Transportation Safety and Investment Plan as approved by the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, the city councils of all 12 cities in Monterey County, and the Transportation Agency Board, Transportation Agency for Monterey County. So going back to the projects and policies document, if we can move on, Mike, to the next one, you will find in that document was this project, the Highway 1 Traffic Relief Busway. And that is what is known as a SURF project. And this whole discussion is being brought to you because it was based upon the committee's discussion and question about the specific project. So note that it is a project as defined in this policies and project description. It is the Highway 1 Traffic Relief Busway. And the purpose of this project is to create, well, let me just go back and just give you the description first, which is to create a new rapid bus corridor along Highway 1 between Monterey and Marina with possible extensions to Castroville, utilizing the shoulder of the highway and or portions of the parallel right of way to provide a way for commuters to spend less time in traffic. And perhaps Mike or Todd can address this later, but there was a whole discussion on MST did an evaluation about whether the shoulder on the highway was feasible, and it was determined that it was not. MST is the lead agency on this project. The project's purpose, and so rapid bus corridors, which are also known as bus rapid transit, are an innovative concept to build improvements to allow buses to travel more rapidly than cars in a particular corridor. This project is a low-cost way to reduce travel times on a busy highway. And Measure X has an investment plan funding of $15 million to this project. And so at this point, I'm going to turn this discussion over to Paula, I believe, and she'll take it from there.
Okay. Okay, I think the most important thing, one of the most important things to point out is that although we've had this discussion before, we had it in March of 2019, it's really important that we provide clarification regarding our duties, especially for the people who are new to the committee. They're defined in several places, as Teresa pointed out. They're in the ordinance, they're in the, but they're also in other areas too. I think it's important to go back to what Teresa said about the responsibilities themselves. Most of the time you heard the words review, request, provide input, make recommendations. In no spot did it say anything about proposing or initiating plan changes. It appears that that is not our responsibility. In section 13 of the ordinance, which is labeled amendments to the investment plan, it states TAMC may propose amendments to the investment plan to respond to unforeseen circumstances or to provide.
Excuse me, Mike, can you bring that up? I believe it's the next slide.
Yeah, there we go. To amend the investment plan, an amendment must be approved by not less than 2/3 vote of the TAMC Board of Directors and by a simple majority weighted vote of the TAMC Board of Directors based on population. Following a noticed public hearing, a 45-day comment period, and review and recommendation by the Citizens Oversight Group. Once again, in that particular spot, it again does not say anything about implementing changes. So it says it clearly limits the scope of XTOC's project responsibility to reviewing and making recommendation on proposed changes to the plan. No mechanism exists for XTOC to propose or initiate plan changes. Those actions would be clearly outside our purview. Does anybody have any questions about this? Anybody?
I would just clarify, I know a discussion happened at the Monterey County Hospitality Association Government Affairs meeting recently. And Tom raised this question, and given the amount of additional revenue that we didn't anticipate, right? We anticipated 20 million a year. We're bringing in almost closer to 30 million a year. You know, could those additional funds be used to fund the other elements of Highway 156? And if that were to happen, the only way it could happen is if this process that Paul, you just outlined, took place. 2/3 of the TMC board, a hearing, this process. It wouldn't be up to us as oversight committee members. It also is, so that's just one example of recent discussion whereby it's clear our role in this is not to initiate any changes. But there is a whole process in place for that to happen. Should there come a time for changes that are warranted, there is a process in place for it.
Absolutely. It's just that our position is review and recommend after a plan is after a change is proposed. We're not the people that do the proposing. So I hope with this presentation, everybody is completely clear regarding the scope of our responsibilities. And as I say, if anybody has any questions about it, now's the time to raise them.
Howard, your concerns, you were the one who raised some of the concerns about SURF and that project. So based on this clarification of kind of where that defines our lane, do you have any further concerns or questions?
No, I think this clarifies it. My concern was that there was quite a kick up among the people out there, two lawsuits, and about a dozen individuals or small groups have raised concerns about this. And my sense is that our job is to review and make recommendations. So review means we got to keep up on these things. We got to watch these things. And if we see something that needs the board's attention, we should recommend that. Simple as that.
I'm not entirely sure, Howard, but the way I interpret this is that it's our job to review and make recommendations both based on proposed plans. We don't have a proposed change to the plan at this point. If we had a proposed change to the plan, there would be a mechanism by which it would eventually come to us, but it's not, I don't believe, or at least it's not my interpretation, that we are the ones who actually make the recommendations for change.
Can you
see it differently?
Paula, does that mean that our oversight stops once the program is approved and initiated?
No, our oversight continues until the program is completed, but our oversight is based on on proposed changes, not on the plan itself.
Todd, did you have your hand up? You want to add some clarity to this conversation? We were a little bit confused.
I do, but I wanted to give Janet a chance. She had her hand up also. I'll go after Janet if she prefers to go first.
Janet?
I just want to clarify that Howard and I have had this discussion, and I have explained to him that the league supported Measure X and continues to support all the projects and programs. And so hopefully that clarified his participation in the process.
Excuse me, Mike, can you put slide number 8 back up again? Howard, I think slide number 8 will clarify. To amend the investment plan, an amendment must be approved by not less than 2/3 vote of the TAMC Board of Directors and by a simple majority weighted vote of the TAMC Board of Directors based on population, following a noticed public hearing, a 45-day comment period, and review and recommendation by the Citizens Oversight Committee. So we're really kind of at the tail end of the process, But I think that's a really good position for us because then we get a really broad look at what has gone on before. It's not our job to implement or propose. It's our job to review the proposals and make any recommendations we have accordingly. Does that make sense?
So once the proposal is established, then we have no further interest in it?
No, once the proposal, once it's approved, once the proposal is approved, and it won't be approved until we have our review and make our recommendations. But once it's approved, then it's approved.
Okay, I'm going to call on Todd now because I think we are getting a little confused at
Yeah,
and what does approved mean.
thank you, Barbara. So I think the distinction is at the end of the last meeting, it was questioned whether the committee should be having stronger oversight on whether the SURF project should be moving forward or if the SURF project should be modified. And as Paula and Teresa explained and reviewed the guidance for the committee, that's not the committee's purpose. But it is appropriate for the committee to be fully informed about projects as they go through development. And that's why we do presentations on our various Measure X projects, like at the last one where we reviewed the US 101 South of Salinas project and looked at where it was in a preliminary fashion and asked for input from the committee members. The key is that all these projects go through a long development process with trials and tribulation where lawsuits aren't that uncommon for a transportation project. Negative feedback in social media like next door is almost guaranteed for every and any project. And it's not really the committee's function to react to those kind of things. It's when there's a defining moment that the project itself needs to change, or that would be something that we would bring to the committee for your input. And then as was shown in the ordinance, as Measure X matures and we find out if we have any new revenues or revenues that exceed delivering the current projects in Measure X, we're going to be looking to the XTAC committee for your advice on strategies on how to move forward. So that's the essence of the XTAC's role in the Measure X process.
Thank you, Todd. So we've got Tom's hand up and then Rick.
Yeah, hi, Tom Raleigh. I believe that the order that the items are listed in that section 13 really don't mean that we're the tail end Charlie. I think that Todd explained that, we might be briefed earlier. I mean, depending on a quarterly schedule, we might hear about a project way before it goes to the public. We might hear about it at early stage. We might hear about it after it's completely developed. I don't think that we're strapped to having it at the tail end Charlie. I would think that most of the people that are on this committee have been involved in transportation issues for a long time. So I support Howard's comment about, taking a look at it. But the thing is, I read the complete report before it went to the MST board. And most of these comments, my interpretation was these were tail end Charlies who tried to get 2 cents in that had not read and were not familiar with the past history. So what happens with the lawsuit will be with the lawsuit, and it's in TAMC's ball of wax to handle the challenges. So I think our ability to review and comment isn't a tail end Charlie function. It's really to be involved in an active role. I'm not on this committee to be a passive role. So thank you.
Just to clarify, though, it is not our role to comment on how the agency, in this case MST, is implementing the project that we approved. That's like we approve the intent and the implementer is MST, and we trust that they are doing all their due diligence and going through all the required processes and procedures as the implementer of that plan. Rick Hoyer.
Yeah, I mean, this is about the sixth different oversight committee I've served on, and it tends to be a question always raised. Best way to think of it is our job is to ensure that the letter of what we voted on is done. So in other words, a list of projects was given, whether we like those projects or not is irrelevant. If they all of a sudden were to come up with a new project and not go through the processes outlined, our job would be to raise a flag about it, not. And if they choose to give us the ability to review it, that's up to TAMC board. Is the money being spent only on what it's supposed to be spent for is what we're supposed to be looking at. Is basically, are they doing what they promised the voters? Are they continuing to do it? It's not whether we like something or not. It's not whether we even like the order of it necessarily. It's, was it in the plan, yes or no? If it's not in the plan, have they gone through what the legal process is to do it? And is the money being spent on what it's supposed to be spent on and not other things? On school board ones, we're looking at, they're spending money on teacher salaries. Well, nope, that's not allowed. Our job is to raise a stink about it. At the end of the day, the reality is oversight committees have zero teeth. All we can do is do a bully pulpit, and that's about it.
All right, that was helpful, Rick. And I think that's what, anybody else have any questions or confusion or need for clarification? Todd?
I just wanted to support that. We really value the diversity of the groups that this committee represents. And that's why we do bring projects for your information and feedback early on and throughout the development of projects. So that's something, while it's not, as Rick said, you've got a very tightly defined formal focus within the ordinance, but we also really value everyone's input as we go through the process of bringing Measure X projects to fruition.
Great, thank you. Any further comments or questions or need for clarification about our purpose and role? If not, then that concludes this item. There's no vote or anything. It was simply a time for discussion on reviewing this committee's purpose as set out by the Measure X ordinance. So thank you, Paula and Teresa, for bringing that forward, and thank you, Todd and Tom and Rick and Howard for clarifying and having this discussion. Good. All right, then next we move on to, Victoria, yes?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I was waiting to the moment when we were going to not talk about this free speech issue, just because I think, unless you tell me otherwise, we're still talking about the overall purpose of the board. Is that right? We're still on that topic. Okay.
The ordinance, right?
Yes, the ordinance. So what I noticed when I was reviewing this, and I don't know why it didn't strike me as strongly before, is that the main purpose of the ordinance and the reason that the taxpayers passed it is contained in these 6 bullet points that primarily 2 of them have to do with maintenance, potholes, and maintaining streets and roads. So I'm going to kind of put those into one. But every other bullet point has a kind of larger goal associated with all this money, which, by the way, to put it in another kind of mathematical lens, started out being maybe a little bit more than $500 million. And now we could project it closer to $1 billion, maybe more than $1 billion, depending on whether these trends continue. That's an enormous difference. But anyway, the primary point of these goal-oriented bullet points, which are what the voters voted on, is to improve safety, to reduce traffic congestion, to improve transportation for seniors, young people, and the disabled, and to make walking and biking safer. So I just wanted to throw out something a little bit, off of our schedule, which is that I feel a little remiss as the bicyclist representative for not foregrounding more consistently the fact that we live in a region where all those goals would be furthered by relatively less expensive projects, which have to do with bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. everybody who knows me knows that's a shtick of mine anyway. But the summary of the actual ordinance makes it super clear that we have a duty perhaps to ask ourselves this question every time something is before us, which is, which populations in our county are stranded or trapped in a transportation situation where they must get in a non-human powered vehicle in order to get to work, for example, or to get to services. And I think we'll find that if we ask ourselves that question and prioritize projects based on solving that issue, we will alleviate all of the issues in this summary. We have trapped populations. And what's bizarre about it is we're almost on the verge in many places of having solved that situation, but there's a glitch here or there in the network that prevents a family or a senior or a young person from not getting in their car. And there's some safety issue, or there's some transition issue, or some gap in the network that actually prevents that from happening. And then that cascades through all of these goals that we have, meaning that more cars are on the road, more congestion, less safety, et cetera. So I just I'm pledging to you today, since we've reviewed this, that I will be a little more vocal on using that as a criterion for our recommendations going forward. I think it's we have really isolated and trapped people in their cars and in their communities, and it's also obviously an economic and poverty related issue. So anyway, that was my piece. I didn't want to move beyond the topic without raising that.
No, that was helpful to give us focus, again, reminding ourselves why we're here and what the priorities are. And also, I hope this was a good opportunity for Natalie and Gabby, Jonathan, those of you who are new, to get your heads a little bit more into what it is we are required to do by this ordinance, and what the overall intent of the voters was as well. And so with that, any other comments or questions about the ordinance or rule? Keith?
I think that Victoria brought up a really great point, and I think maybe what we ought to do is grab those 6 bullet points and use them as a filter for every topic that we're faced with, and make sure that we're staying true to the charge that we've been given. So a lot of times on my philanthropic group, I get bajillion requests. I have a filter that allows me to say, yes, this meets this criteria, misses that one, and allows us to approve. I think staying true to the intent. So I would just propose that maybe we take those bullet points as a filter and as a like a core value or something that we put up on top of our charge. Good discussion. Thank you.
It's not a bad idea. What came to my mind listening to you say that, Keith, was, maybe top of our agendas, in addition to the Zoom link, it could follow, the core principles or purpose of Measure X Oversight Committee. And as chair, I don't think I can propose any actions, but if somebody else wants to take that idea and propose it, and we could act accordingly or not. Victoria?
Happy to propose that. I think it's, I would move, I don't know if it's a motion, but I will pretend it's a motion. I will move that we modify the prefacing papers of our meeting agendas to reiterate the summary that is the 6 bullet points from the taxpayers, what would you call that? The ordinance that was before them.
Section 2 of the ordinance.
2, that's right.
And if I can do it as an alternate, I would second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Victoria and then Keith.
Barbara, I'm sorry, but as a non-agendized item, I don't think we can take action on this, but we can take it as advisement as staff and maybe bring something back for consideration.
Okay, you mean even though it's relevant to the discussion of our role and purpose, it's not agendizable because it's I don't quite understand why
Well, I just, as far as an action item, there wasn't an action on the agenda.
Got it. Okay, so we would have to put it on the next agenda if we wanted to vote on it formally.
Yeah, but we're happy to bring it back.
And can I just make one other comment? I totally understand the protocol there, but I just want to give one example, which I meant to do before, even on the maintenance point, and Todd will remember this very clearly. It was a lovely little interlude we had when there was a maintenance project in the city of, well, not the city, it was in the county, between the county and the city line of Carmel. There was a maintenance project to repave the road on Rio Road between the crossroads, which is a major service and medical and food service and gas service link for the town of Carmel and for the valley. And during the maintenance program, with the help of then Supervisor Potter and Todd and others on the TAMC staff, we actually halted the maintenance program and looked basically at, in a way, at these TAMC values, even though they weren't there at the time, the Measure X values, and said, you know what, we're in the middle of a maintenance project. How can we achieve some of those goals? And we actually postponed the project 3 months or so while they restriped and redesigned the striping of the repaving to accommodate a bike lane on both sides. It had a little bit of community reaction with it, but it basically went through pretty easily. It was a very low cost change, and it required, as Keith said, this basically this filtering, this test that the project, it was a maintenance project. So every single bullet there could be informed by just doing a better job or a higher priority on this connectivity issue. So anyway, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm happy to see this on the next. Again, I'm not sure it even has to raise to the level of an action item. I think this is almost a clerical item. We're recommending, I'll rephrase my motion to a recommendation that the TAMPs, the Measure X agendas simply include this. And if the staff would take that recommendation, that'd be terrific.
Okay, so the amendment is, or the motion is withdrawn, and instead you're making a recommendation to staff to incorporate these values on the top of our agendas going forward. Kevin and Janet, is this relevant to, your hands are up, relevant to the withdrawal of the motion and the recommendation to staff? Go ahead, Kevin.
Barbara, yes, I'm in agreement with what Victoria just said. We've never had this committee approve structures of minutes of agendas. So you know what, just stick the stuff at the top. I haven't heard anybody object to it. Use your discretion as chair working with staff and just put it on.
Okay, Janet. You're on mute, Janet.
I find this somewhat confusing as it relates to our overall purpose, and I'm not sure it relates to projects. I think the description of how it related to a city project was helpful, but I find this direction somewhat confusing in terms of our basically being reactive. So I just wanted to note that, and I'm not sure it's that helpful. So thank you.
Okay, well, we'll let staff then take this under advisement. My understanding, just to summarize, Janet, was Victoria's suggestion was, you know, in that section 2 of the ordinance states very clearly what the goals of Measure X are all about. And the idea was to, we should both by Victoria and Keith suggesting we should always keep those paramount in our mind, like a value statement or a mission statement. So recommendation to staff to consider, you know, including that as kind of a reminder, focus point for us in front of, at the top level of future agendas. So we'll let you all take it from there. Okay, then we'll move on to our next item, which is, I believe it is a presentation from Mr. Zeller about our quarterly revenue forecasts and status of the regional projects.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mike Zeller. I'm a principal transportation planner, and just be bringing up a brief presentation that I have on the Measure X revenue forecasts, the most recent quarterly forecast, as well as giving an update on the regional projects included in Measure X, the 40% of the funding for the program. So what we have up here is just an overview of the Measure X revenues as they have come in, as well as some recent forecasts for future revenues. In the red along the $20 million line there, that was the initial estimates for what we anticipated Measure X would generate over the 30 years when the program was first developed. So $600 million over 30 years, so $20 million a year. As what had been alluded to earlier in the discussion today, revenues have come in higher than what was initially estimated. The first year at fiscal year 17-18 was just over 28 million. That rose a little bit higher to 30 million in 18-19. With the shelter in place earlier in 2019, there was an expectation initially that revenues would drop back down closer to about 24 million in fiscal year 19-20, but they actually did come in a little bit higher, or actually quite a bit higher, at $28 million. And then similarly, in fiscal year 2021, initial estimates, if you recall, were that the revenues would come back up a little bit higher to $30 million, but actual revenues came in at 32 million. So again, another bump up. This was primarily supported with auto sales in construction, as well as online sales, really provided a big boost to the revenues with the Wayfair decision that said that online sales taxes need to be collected and remitted. So things like Amazon sales, those sales taxes are being collected now and put towards Measure X. So this is all helping to boost the revenues that we're bringing in. Over the next 2 fiscal years, 21-22 and 22-23, it's currently anticipated that revenues will stay a little bit higher, above $30 million going forward. So, all looks good for the local jurisdictions that receive the 60% of Measure X revenues for the local streets and roads funding. So this really helps with the backlog of maintenance needs that we have in the county. But as staff and as a board direction, we've been looking at these not necessarily increased revenues, but just revenues that are coming in higher. In a conservative light, we want to make sure that we still are delivering the program of projects that we promised the voters with Measure X. So really not looking at this like we have additional money until we actually bring in that full $600 million that was promised. So we're using these funds essentially to build up a reserve, and it's helping us to delay having to do any bonding or debt financing for projects. It's giving us more capacity to work through the program on a pay-as-you-go basis. And currently we're not looking to have to bond for any of our projects until about 24, 25, 25, 26, that updates as project schedules updates, but it's giving us flexibility to hold off on incurring any cost of debt financing. So what I'd like to do now is just walk through each of the regional projects in Measure X and just give an update on each one. The first one up is the Scenic State Route 68 project. This is for the full corridor. The cost is $85 million. This project runs between Salinas and Monterey, looking at a corridor of 9 roundabouts along State Route 68. It's currently in environmental, and TAMC is working with Caltrans to conduct the additional design assessments on the roundabouts and complete those analysis for the environmental phase, hoping to get that completed soon so that the design phase can begin in fiscal year 22-23. Primarily, the project is funded with the State Transportation Improvement Program, as well as Highway Infrastructure Program funds. There's a minor bit of Measure X that's being contributed towards future phases. And for the full construction of the project, we will be requiring future grants to be able to fully fund the project. This project could be a great candidate for the Senate Bill 1 Congested Corridors Program in a future cycle once the project gets more shovel ready. The next project is the State Route 156 and Castroville Boulevard project. So the full State Route 156 corridor is completed an environmental review as well as a supplemental review. This first segment at the Castroville Boulevard interchange, this project would construct a new interchange at Castroville Boulevard as well as 2 additional roundabouts at the, for the off ramps. Provides connections in with the Castroville bicycle path. So as Committee Member Beach was discussing about making sure that projects are providing multimodal access, non-auto access for Monterey County residents to be able to access different parts of the county and not feel trapped. This project is being designed near a proposed Chispa housing development. There's also other residential areas near this project, as well as the high school. So with this project being able to connect in and provide an access to the Castroville bike path, it gives that non-auto access, as well as providing congestion relief, as well as improvements for freight corridor. So this project really does hit on a lot of different aspects that for ways that people travel around the county. The project is fully funded at $55 million for total cost through construction. This was a project that we received $20 million in Senate Bill 1 Trade Corridors Grant funds, as well as using quite a bit of State Transportation Improvement Program dollars, as well as some local developer fees and a small amount of Measure X. This really gives us, shows up, the ability to use Measure X to bring in state dollars into the county to construct these projects. This is a really great example of how we've been able to leverage Measure X dollars to and complete a really important priority project. The next one up is the Blackie Road Extension project. So this is related to the previous project that we discussed, Castroville Boulevard interchange. This project extends Blackie Road up to the new proposed Castroville Boulevard interchange and allows direct access for freight and trucks to get directly onto the highway, so not needing to go on Castroville Boulevard or Merritt Street and 183. So pulls that truck traffic off of local roads and provides a direct access for freight to get straight to the highway. This is a county-led project, beginning environmental phase soon. It's funded currently with developer fees, as well as Senate Bill 1 Local Partnership Program funds. The Local Partnership Program funds are ones that specifically that we would not be eligible to receive if it were not for Measure X. So not even just for being able to leverage and bring in additional dollars, we would not even be eligible for the program without Measure X. So another great example of leveraging. Estimated total cost for this project is $6.5 million. For the US 101 south of Salinas, so this project is currently in pre-environmental phase, so doing some initial studies and looking to start the environmental phase next fiscal year. The project itself is looking at constructing frontage roads on either side of US 101 from south of Salinas to Chualar, with potentially some interchange improvements at Abbott as well as at Chualar. Currently, the project would be funded through the environmental phase with State Transportation Improvement Program funds. We would have Measure X funds for later phases. And then again, this is another project where future grants would be required to be able to fully fund design and construction for this project. This one in particular could be potentially a good candidate for the Trade Corridors program, similarly to the 156 project that was successful in receiving grant funds. The next project up is the Imgen Road widening. So it's a portion of the Marina Salinas multimodal corridor. This was the first project that was awarded grant funds, first Measure X project that was awarded grant funds using Measure X as a match. We received $19 million of local partnership program competitive funds. The project just recently completed the final design and right-of-way, and at this month's California Transportation Commission meeting, received its allocation, construction allocation of those $19 million to start construction. So this project will be, the City of Marina will be working to award the contracts by next spring and then starting construction next summer. So this is really exciting to be able to get this project underway. It would extend the 4-lane section on Imgen Road all the way up to Reservation, and as well as make roundabout improvements at the intersections. And also, again, being a multimodal project, provide additional bike, ped, and transit improvements as well through the corridor. And again, the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway, so another bicycle and pedestrian facility that's in Measure X. The full Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway, it's proposed as a 28 miles of recreational trails around Marina, CSUMB, Seaside, Del Rey Outs, connecting the communities around the former Fort Ord to open space and education, jobs, and just being able to get out and enjoy all the open spaces that we have around the peninsula. The full 28 miles did complete the environmental review in March of last year. And this first segment, the Canyon Del Rey segment, which runs through Del Rey Outs and provides a connection with Laguna Grande Regional Park, Work Memorial Park, Del Rey Park, and the Frog Pond Wetland Preserve. Also provides a connection, a safe routes to school connection to Del Rey Woods Elementary School. So in about a 1.5 mile segment, links up with different open space areas that wouldn't necessarily be accessible without using an automobile. This project received a $10.4 million active transportation program grant. So the design, right-of-way, and construction are fully funded for this project. We're currently in final design and right-of-way, working through the initial phases with some additional public outreach on the project to get feedback from the community so that we can complete final design and enter into construction in 2023. There's about, I mentioned that the active transportation program grant was just over $10 million. There's about $2 million, $2.3 million in Measure X contributed to this project, as well as $600,000 of local partnership program funds. So again, another project where a minor amount of Measure X funds has brought in a significant amount of matching funds to help us fully fund the construction of the project. The next project, one that we discussed earlier, the SURF Highway 1 Rapid Busway. Constructing the rapid busway between Marina through Sand City and Seaside, about a 6-mile corridor to provide additional transit capacity to help relieve congestion on Highway 1. Monterey Salinas Transit recently completed the environmental phase, and they're entering, will be entering the design phase. This project is estimated at $56 million through construction. There's funded currently with Measure X. MST, because they also have a local sales tax, receives a small portion of local partnership program funds as well. So that portion is the portion that's dedicated to MST. And then the project also has some federal transit funding as well. The next project up is the South County maintenance facility. So this project recently finished construction. It's a $17 million project. It was 11,000 square foot facility that has 4 maintenance bays and storage for 40 buses. And it's built to accommodate future battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And the new facility will support MST's fixed route and on-call services in the Salinas Valley. So for all of King City, Greenfield, Soledad, and Gonzales. This project was funded with Measure X, and again with MST's portion of the local partnership program funds. There's really an innovative financing package. They were able to receive a TIFIA loan, as well as applied other state and federal transit funds towards this project. And they recently just had the ribbon cutting to open the facility, so it was really exciting. And finally, the last one I'd like to talk about is a program of projects, or our Safe Routes to School program in Measure X. There's 5 primary projects that I'd like to point out, funded at a total of $5.5 million through a combination of Measure X, Caltrans planning grants, as well as the Active Transportation Program. So the first of those 5 projects was the Seaside and Marina Safe Routes to School plan, so developing Safe Routes to School plans for 15 public schools in Marina and Seaside. This project received a grant of $361,000 using only a $41,000 match from Measure X. So quite a bit of leveraging there. The Salinas Safe Routes to School plan, that created a Safe Routes to School plan for all 44 schools in Salinas, in the city of Salinas. That was a $955,000 grant, leveraged with just $169,000 of Measure X. The agency also just recently received another grant for the Salinas Valley Safe Routes to School. So this will serve all K through 12 schools in Gonzales, Soledad, Greenfield, and King City. We received $664,000 matched with only $127,000 from Measure X. A prior project that we received funds on was what was called the Every Child Safe Routes to School program. So this provided bike and pedestrian safety education, had designs for traffic gardens, as well as walking school buses, provided manuals and materials for schools to implement walking school buses, so helping school children find safe ways to walk to school. And we also held a series of bicycle repair workshops in Greenfield. This was a $2.1 million grant that was matched with just $82,000 of Measure X. And then finally, the Broadway Complete Streets project. This was a City of Seaside project that received an Active Transportation Program grant of $12 million. This project would extend West Broadway Avenue all the way to General Drum Moore, but it did include some Safe Routes to School components in this project. It will look to convert most of the intersections along Broadway to roundabouts, making it safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. It'll add bicycle facilities on both sides of the street, as well as a protected path in front of MLK Junior School for the Arts. And then there's also additional improvements that will be made at Yosemite Avenue that improve active transportation access for 4 schools. So the Safe Routes to School component for this, excuse me, for this project was $980,000. So of the $5.5 million cost for all of 5 of these projects, $5.1 million came from grants and just $400,000 came from Measure X. So again, another example of great leveraging that we've been able to use Measure X to bring in a lot of extra dollars to be able to complete these projects. And then lastly, just like to give a quick update on the fiscal year 2020-2021 annual audits for Measure X. So it's getting to that time of year again where all the local jurisdictions will be submitting their annual reports. Those are due on December 31st of this year. We've sent out the reminders to all the jurisdictions along with the checklist for all the materials that need to be included in their annual update. Received feedback back from quite a few that they are working on their audits. One of the questions that did come up at a prior Citizens Oversight Committee meeting was about Sand City. If you recall, last year's annual audit, Sand City did not meet their maintenance of effort requirements, so they did not spend enough of their own funds to meet the maintenance of effort requirement in order to be eligible for continued disbursement of Measure X funds. The issue is that Sand City's maintenance of effort is about close to $500,000, about $490,000. I believe that they were somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000 short of on those expenditures. The way that we have addressed that issue in the past is that we've just asked the jurisdiction to essentially make a catch-up payment and still meet their current year maintenance of effort requirements. So basically just catch up on the expenditures that they were short on. This is the process that we used with Pacific Grove when we ran into a similar issue. The issue with Sand City is that the amount of Measure X revenues that they receive is quite a bit smaller in comparison to what their maintenance of effort requirement is. Their annual Measure X is only about $30,000. And as I mentioned, their maintenance of effort is close to $500,000. And this is due to when we had changed the maintenance of efforts requirement definition, making it either the same as what's in the Senate Bill 1 road maintenance and rehabilitation account. So what the jurisdictions have to meet to be eligible for their Senate Bill 1 funds, which is an average of 2009, 10, 10, 11, and 11, 12 expenditures. So an average of those 3 years, or the expenditures from 2016 when Measure X went into effect, whichever one of those was higher. In Sand City's case, it was the Senate Bill 1, so the 2009, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12 average was the higher, so that was their maintenance of effort for Measure X. So what we had advised the city is that since what we look at is what the city reports to the state controller for their transportation expenditures as a way to verify that those expenditures were made. We look at the local streets and roads report that all the jurisdictions file with the state controller. We had advised or recommended that the city should reach out to the state controller to see if there was any, well, to first look to see if those reports that they had made to the state controller were accurate, and if there was any adjustments that they felt that needed to be made, that they worked with the state controller to do that. After speaking with the city's contract engineer, they said that they had reached out to the state controller but have not resolved the issue yet. So since the beginning of this year, the Measure X disbursements for Sand City have been withheld. So we have not been providing them with their Measure X funds. And we've let them know that essentially the way that the policies for Measure X work is that a jurisdiction has 2 years to come back into compliance before, and if the jurisdiction is not back in compliance within 2 years, the funds that have been withheld would then be redistributed to all the remaining jurisdictions that are in compliance. So there is a potential for losing the funding if the Sand City is not able to resolve the issue. So we're continuing to have discussions with them to try to help them resolve the issue, but it's really one of them looking through those reports and making sure that what was reported was accurate, and then getting some relief or some correction to those reports if that is necessary. So we will, of course, bring back more information as this moves along. If there's any updates, we'll certainly bring it back to the committee. But that's concludes my report, and be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. That is a long-winded way of saying, wow, we leveraged a lot of money for a lot of different projects. Thank you for that. Just one quick comment. I thought we had mentioned this last time we had a similar kind of report. If you can just graphically break down those numbers, right, of Measure X is how much money out of the total costs of the project, and maybe a delineation of where those funds came from. Putting some breaking it down for us in dollars on the graphic would just help to comprehend that point of how much we've leveraged. So a couple comments, questions from the rest of the committee. I think Paul, I saw your hand up first, and then Tom Rowley, and then Kevin.
Going back to the 156 and the Castroville Boulevard, you said that project is fully funded, but still in the design phase. Could you elaborate on that? How can it be both?
We received a $20 million grant from the Trade Corridors Enhancement Project, which fully funds the project through construction. So the phase that the project is currently in is design and right of way. And then the part of the grant that we received provides construction funding for the project. And that's scheduled in the next fiscal year.
But we don't know if that's going to be over $55 million.
That's currently that's the estimate for the project through construction is 55 million, and we have full funding to bring us to that amount.
To that amount. Well,
Yes.
if the design dictates over 55, what do we do?
Well, there's additional funds in for the 156 project dedicated in Measure X. We can look for using those funds to increase whatever that amount is, or we can look for additional funding as well from other sources. But typically that would be the process.
And that's the case for every project. Right now, it's tracking with the early engineer cost estimates. As it finishes design, and the next step is for it to go out to bid. There's a final engineering cost estimate that's done at that point, and it's compared to the bids that are received from construction firms. And once you get the bid, that's when you know how much it's going to cost. You don't know before
obviously,
that.
and no design, nothing's been on budget in the design phase. And nothing's been fully funded without the design being completed. I know it's splitting hairs here, but if we're going to say something's fully funded and it's not even designed yet, I think it's a false statement.
Maybe that is the way we look at things, and how we are tracking funding. We base our funding that we're pursuing for projects based on what the current engineer cost estimate is, and based on that, the project's
Not true cost. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I can see where Paul's point, though, the semantics of the presentation and use of those terminology can be a little confusing. Something you might just consider. There's internal language and vocabulary to mean one thing. There's external and how it's heard can come across as meaning something else. So I appreciate you raising that point, Paul. Tom Rowley and then Kevin.
Just in the city of Monterey, there was a original study bike pedestrian plan that was adopted back in 2012, 2013, about 8 or 9 years ago. They recently did and adopted the city council a complete update of that plan. Some ways it was less, it was a little bit, the original plan was better in certain respects, and it showed, like for instance, in bicycling, broke down age groups and stuff like that on, what was the potential. Anyway, the new plan was a complete update, but the last part of it was an implementation list of proposed ideas with grant projects to be submitted for grant funding. And these are all bike related, pedestrian, and a lot of good projects. Some of them were total pie in the sky, off the wall. One of the main projects in Monterey is the Del Monte Avenue corridor, which the presentation was made last spring to the city council. A mega billion dollar, I'm saying billion, but a mega bucks project to eventually protect the Del Monte Avenue corridor from sea level rise, and in which the deadline to make a decision on this is like 3 years from now. The city is looking for a $400 million update just to look at the alternatives for building a seawall to protect the Del Monte Avenue corridor. There's all kinds of crazy ideas. Well, we'll just let it erode and just have a new waterfront. But I don't think the city, and I don't think the powers to be are going to be willing to accept that in the long haul without looking at a project to try and protect it. We know we have a beach nourishment plan, which every other year, every 2-3 years.
Excuse me, Tom. How does this focus on the Measure X?
What I'm trying to say
plan?
is the list of projects that is on this list. I would like to hope that Teresa can get the projects and bring it back to this committee for maybe looking at to see which ones could be put in for the TAMC for a bike and pedestrian future projects. I don't think the main project of the Del Monte Avenue corridor is just too big to look at without looking at it separately. But I do mention that project because this can engulf all the other projects in the size of them. But there is a one-page list of projects that bike and pedestrian that just was updated that needs to be looked at. And so I'm just asking that if we can get Teresa to bring that back and take a look at it, because as being in the center of the peninsula, Monterey's bike and pedestrian paths affect all the cities on the Monterey Peninsula. So I just encourage us to take a look at that list. This is a wish list of projects, and this is what Measure X is supposedly trying to do. So I just propose that to you. Thank you.
Okay, so there's been a request of staff for that list of projects. Todd, do you want to comment?
Normally, well, that was a pretty comprehensive list of projects and issues well beyond Measure X, and really what this committee's role is. Normally, when you have like the city's active transportation plan that they recently adopted, that goes to our bicycle and pedestrian committee for review and comments. And then the city staff itself decides on which projects to consider for any discretionary funding that goes through TAMC or at the state level. So they take their list of projects that you know, the larger kind of dream list, and then narrow it down and see what's most viable, and then submit those for local, state, and federal grants. So that would be the normal process for looking at something like the city's recent planning effort.
And our role in the cities is to make certain, back to Mike's presentation, make certain, and borrowing Rick Hoyer's language, make certain they're spending their money on what they are supposed to be spending it on.
That's correct. And as far as Measure X goes, the 60% that goes to the cities and the county by formula, they do have discretion on how they use that within the terms of Measure X, which is generally maintenance, but also safety projects, which certainly include bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So that doesn't go to Measure X other than the oversight role that was mentioned about just making sure the funds are used correctly.
Make sure they're not swapping out Measure X funds for what they should be spending on their streets and roads, maintenance of effort, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Kevin Dayton?
Yes, I'm going to bring this up since the Marina Salinas multimodal corridor, the Imgen road widening, was brought up. A few days ago, TAMC issued a press release about getting the big state grant for that. I tweeted it out, got some responses back from bicycle advocates in Monterey County complaining that the bike path didn't have a separation from the road like a class 4 bike path. And they insisted that there should be consideration of that. And I said, oh, you'll have to go and talk to the TAMC board or the bicycle and pedestrian committee about that. But they insisted that I bring it up. And considering that just earlier we were talking about maybe we omitted some of the consideration of bicycle expenditures as we go about our business. And now with Tom Rowley mentioning bikes too, I will bring up this particular issue to TAMC staff and to this oversight committee, that there are some citizens out there who believe that perhaps some of the bicycle expenditures are being overlooked on Measure X projects.
Okay, any responses to this concern that Kevin's presenting?
I believe that project has a class 1 separated path on the northwest side of the road. And then the buffered bike lanes, which are on the same plane as the roadway, but like class 2 bike lanes are generally striped, are incorporated throughout the project. So I would have to take that back to double check on the class 1 path, but that's my understanding. Mike, are you aware of anything else?
No, that was my understanding of the project.
So maybe Kevin, if you could put me in touch with the people who complained and we can go over the project with them. We'd be happy to do a one-on-one with them.
Yeah, I will. And you know what? They're going to talk about class 4, but I'll tell them to contact you and they'll be ready to hear, you'll be ready to hear from them.
So for everyone's benefit, class 1 is a separate path like the Monterey Bay Rec Trail. The class 2 is a stripe on the road that defines a bike lane. And then a class 4 is some type of buffer. It could be a separation, either physical or striped, but a separation between the vehicle travel lane and the bike path. So a class 4 is very similar to a separate path. It's just immediately adjacent to the travel lane.
And what you're saying is the project includes class 1s.
A class 1 is better because it's more separation.
And what is, sorry, then now that you've explained those different classes, what does the project contain?
It includes both class 1 and class 2. A separate path and bike lanes.
All right, well, thank you for bringing that forward, Kevin, and thank you, Todd, for engaging with the public's concerns. Other questions, comments on any of the projects as Mike updated them? Okay, looking forward to getting beyond design phases and hearing more of those. Construction's going to start next summer updates. Thank you. I think we have one last item on our agenda, and back to Mike queued us up for this one, the audit for the next fiscal year. Let me find my agenda. I need to call for nominations and elect members to serve on the Measure Audit Subcommittee. And this is a subcommittee and fulfilling a major part of our responsibility to conduct an independent audit to assure that the Measure X funds are expended according to the requirements, and then to prepare that report, and that our report is included in TAMC's overall annual report. And so we need to have a subcommittee that joins myself as chair and Paula as vice chair to conduct the audit. And it's been, as we've done this now, I think 3 times, it's pretty straightforward. In terms of the process, as Mike said, he has alerted all of the cities that the audit's coming. The due date for providing their materials is the end of the year, if I got that correct, Mike. And then that gives us basically January to for the subcommittee to do its analysis and work and write up the report for inclusion in TAMC's report. Do I have that correct, Teresa? The timeline?
Yes, you do. So the committee would meet beginning in January, and I'll send out a calendar once the committee is established.
Great. And our work has usually been 1 or 2 meetings, reviewing some drafts. It's really pretty, like I said, pretty straightforward. We did the heavy lifting in the first year, and this one is not as daunting as it might sound. So who will join Paula and I? I need to call for nominations. I'd like to at least get 2 other people. 3 would be awesome. I open the floor for nominations for subcommittee members to the audit committee. Go ahead, Paula.
I'd like to nominate one of the newer members. I think it would be very advantageous for some of the new members to get their feet wet so they are aware of the ins and outs of how this is done. Either Victoria or one of the other newer members. I'm not sure exactly who is new and who is alternate.
Do I look new and fresh, Paula? Because I've been on the committee since the beginning. But thank you.
Yeah, I just obviously didn't notice. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Who are the newer members? I mean, do we need to nominate, or is this a voluntary thing?
We need to nominate and vote. So far I heard you nominate Victoria.
All right.
Victoria, would you accept that nomination?
Well, I like the idea of the newer members. I think we should start there. And then if we can't get back to work, then maybe the old hands like myself. But yeah, I heard some new voices this morning, some very young voices. I think that would be nice to nominate them. Let me see if I can find them here.
Either Natalie.
We had you, Natalie, and Monica.
Natalie, you are being nominated by Victoria. Would you accept the nomination?
I'll accept.
Thank you. I would enjoy working with you. Kevin, did you have a nomination?
I was going to volunteer myself if nobody wanted to do it, but it sounds like people want to do it and new people are coming in, so I will hold back on that.
You've done it the last 3 years, and I appreciate your willingness to do it again. But I do agree we should spread the experience among the team here too. Victoria, were you or Paula? Were you also nominating Monica?
I was going to ask Scott, are you a new member? Scott Walls? No. No. How about Jonathan?
I'm happy to volunteer.
All right, then I'll nominate Jonathan Geisler.
Geisler, yes.
Geisler. Okay, I'll nominate Jonathan Geisler.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan, and accepting. Any other nominations? All right, so we have a slate for the audit subcommittee here of Natalie representing the youth, Jonathan representing the chambers, right? Chamber of Commerce, and also Victoria representing bicycle interest.
Good, that's great.
All right, I will close the nominations and accept a motion to approve the slate.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of Veronica or Victoria and Natalie and Jonathan joining
I don't have it, Rosemary.
myself and Paula, please raise your hand. Any opposition? All right, motion carries. Thank you again, Veronica or Victoria, pardon me, and Natalie and Jonathan. Appreciate your help, and we'll wait to hear from Teresa. And Mike, good luck collecting all of the audit information from all of our jurisdictions. All right, I think that concludes our agenda. Are there any other announcements? Anything we've missed? And anyone else have any announcements?
I do have one announcement. So going to our board this month is the Transportation Excellence Awards. As you guys may be aware, we do that award every year where we seek nominations for employees, individuals, organizations, groups that have made a contribution to making transportation improvements in the county. That's our way to recognize them. So that's going to go to our board for approval for the call for nominations. Once they approve that, I will be sending you that notice because I would like your assistance with spreading the word that we're looking for nominations. Perhaps there's someone within your own communities that you can think of that you might want to recommend for that award. It will be held in January, so just be on the lookout for that. And other than that, this is our last meeting for this year. We will pick back up again in January. So let me just get ahead of the curve and wish everybody safe and happy holidays as we move forward. So with that, that's the only announcement.
Any others? Okay. Thank you, Teresa. I can't believe it's the end of the year already. But I appreciate all of your contributions, everyone. And thank you for being here and thank you for continuing to engage in this important work. All right, we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.